The envelope had no return address, just my name, my rank, and a postmark from Washington, D.C. I stared at it for 3 days before I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit. Dark hair, bright smile, standing in front of what looked like a birthday cake. On the back, someone had written 5 words in neat block letters. "You saved the wrong person." That was 6 months ago, and I've been trying to figure out what it means ever since. My name is Marcus Webb, Sergeant Marcus Webb, 2nd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg, or at least that's who I used to be. These days, I'm not sure what I am. The military says I never deployed to Syria in March of 2019. My service record shows I was stateside the entire month running training exercises in North Carolina. But I was there. My entire team was there, and we did something that cost us everything. I need to tell you what really happened, not the official version, not the sanitized story they feed to the press, the truth. Because if I don't, nobody will. It started with a briefing that never officially happened. February 28, 2019. We were pulled from rotation 3 days before a scheduled leave. No explanation, just orders to report to a secure facility off base, the kind of place that doesn't exist on any map. There were 6 of us. Me, Lieutenant Carter, who'd been my commanding officer for 2 years, Martinez, who could navigate by the stars if he had to, Jackson, our medic, Thompson on comms, and Davis, who was the best shot I'd ever seen. We'd deployed together twice before, Iraq and Afghanistan. We knew each other's moves, finished each other's sentences, trusted each other with our lives. The briefing room was empty except for a colonel we'd never seen before. No name tag, no unit insignia, just a folder marked with classification stamps I didn't even recognize. "Gentlemen," he said, not bothering with introductions, "what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. This mission doesn't exist. If it goes wrong, you never hear. Is that understood?" We nodded. We'd heard versions of this before. Black ops, deniable operations, the kind of thing that keeps senators up at night and soldiers in the dark. There's a package in Syria, Aleppo region. The package needs extraction within the next 72 hours. Time-sensitive, high value. Any questions? Carter raised his hand. What kind of package? The kind that stays classified. The colonel slid photos across the table. Satellite imagery, street layouts, a compound surrounded by walls. Your insertion point is here. You'll go in quiet, retrieve the package, and extract to this location for pickup. 12 hours maximum on the ground. I studied the photos. The compound looked fortified. Armed guards visible even in the satellite shots. This wasn't going to be a simple grab and go. Opposition? Martinez asked. Local extremist cell. Well armed but poorly trained. Intel suggests 15 to 20 fighters. They don't know what they have, which works in our favor. Davis leaned forward. And if we run into trouble? You won't. The colonel's expression didn't change, because this mission doesn't exist, which means neither do you if something goes wrong. No air support, no QRF, no extraction team on standby. You go in, you get it done, you get out. Clean. The room went quiet. We all understood what he was really saying. If this went sideways, we were on our own. Completely. One more thing. The colonel pulled out a single photo, not satellite imagery, a portrait. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair and her father's eyes. This is the package. Her name is classified. Everything about her is classified, but she's American, she's in danger, and she needs to come home. That's all you need to know. I stared at the photo. She looked like someone's daughter, someone's sister. Just a kid, really, even if she was technically an adult. 24 hours to prep, the colonel said, standing. Wheels up at 0400 day after tomorrow. Memorize everything in this folder, then burn it. Welcome to a mission that never happened, gentlemen. We deployed from a civilian airfield. No military markings on the plane, no paperwork, no flight plan filed with anyone official. Just 6 soldiers with sanitized gear and a bad feeling in our guts. "This feels wrong," Jackson said as we crossed into Turkish airspace. "Since when do we risk an entire team for one civilian?" "Since that civilian is someone important," Martinez muttered. "It has to be. Senator's kid, general's daughter, someone with serious pull." Carter shut that down fast. "Doesn't matter who she is. She's American and she needs help. That's the job." But Martinez wasn't wrong. I'd seen plenty of Americans in bad situations overseas. Journalists captured by militants, aid workers taken hostage. The government usually negotiates. They don't send in special forces for a grab operation unless the stakes are incredibly high. We landed at a remote airstrip in southern Turkey just after midnight. A local contact, another person who officially didn't exist, provided transport across the border. By dawn, we were 20 kilometers from the target compound, holed up in an abandoned farmhouse, watching the location through binoculars and waiting for nightfall. The compound matched the satellite photos. High walls, guard towers at each corner, armed men patrolling in pairs. Whatever extremist cell was holding the girl, they were serious about security. "I count 18 hostiles," Davis reported from his position. "Rotating guards every 4 hours. Sloppy discipline, though. They're using flashlights, smoking on duty. These guys aren't professionals." "Good," Carter said. "That works for us. We go in at 0200. Place should be at its quietest. Martinez, you're on point. Thompson, maintain calm silence unless we have a problem. Jackson, stay with the vehicle. If we're not back in 90 minutes, you leave without us. Webb, Davis, you're with me on entry." The hours crawled by. I cleaned my weapon 3 times, checked my gear 4 times, tried not to think about what "you were never here" really meant if things went bad. At 045, we moved out. The approach was textbook. We cut through the perimeter fence at a blind spot between guard towers, moved through the compound's outer courtyard in complete silence, and breached the main building without firing a shot. The guards never saw us coming. Inside, the building was a maze. Dark hallways, locked doors, the smell of mold and fear. We cleared each room methodically, Martinez on point, weapons up, hearts hammering. We found her in a room on the 2nd floor. She was sitting on a thin mattress, arms wrapped around her knees, wearing dirty clothes that had probably been nice once. When we entered, she didn't scream, didn't even look surprised, just stared at us with hollow eyes. "Emma?" Carter whispered, using the name from the classified brief. She blinked, nodded slowly. "We're Americans. We're here to take you home." Before I tell you what happened next, if you're hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here. And drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you are listening from. Emma stood up. Her legs shook. "How long have I been here?" "Doesn't matter," I said, moving to her side. "You're leaving now. Can you walk?" "I think so." Jackson appeared in the doorway. "We've got a problem. Guard rotation just changed early. They're doing a head count. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they realize she's gone." Carter swore under his breath. "Change of plans. We go loud if we have to. Priority is getting the package to the extract point. Move!" We made it halfway down the stairs before the alarm went up. Shouting, running footsteps, the compound coming alive around us. The mission had just gone from covert to combat in seconds. "Contact front!" Martinez opened fire as fighters poured into the hallway. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. "Go! Go!" Carter shoved Emma toward the back exit. Davis and I laid down covering fire while the others moved. The fighters were disorganized, panicking, firing wildly, but there were a lot of them. We fought our way through the building and out into the courtyard. The vehicle was there, engine running, Jackson at the wheel. We piled in, rounds pinging off the armored sides, and punched through the compound gate at 60 miles an hour. But we weren't clear yet. 2 trucks appeared behind us, fighters hanging out the windows, weapons blazing. The desert road was straight and empty. No cover, No options except to run and hope our vehicle was faster. Thompson worked the radio, trying to raise our extract team, but got only static. We were still in the blackout zone, completely alone. "They're gaining!" Davis leaned out the window, returning fire. One of the pursuing trucks swerved, crashed into a ditch, but the other kept coming. Emma was pressed against the floor, hands over her head, breathing hard. "They'll find us," she whispered. "They always find us." "Not today," I told her, trying to sound confident. We reached the extract point, another abandoned farm, this one with a clearing big enough for a helicopter, and the second truck was still on us. Carter made a decision. "Jackson, Davis, get her to the LZ. Martinez, Webb, Thompson, we hold them here." "Sir, we can—" "That's an order. Get her home." The three of us took positions behind an old stone wall as the truck roared closer. Jackson gunned the engine, taking Emma and Davis toward the clearing. We had to buy them enough time for the helicopter to arrive and get them out. The firefight lasted maybe 5 minutes, felt like hours. The fighters weren't well trained, but they were determined. We put them down, but not before Thompson took a round through the shoulder. "I'm good," he gasped, even though he clearly wasn't. "Just get to the LZ." By the time we reached the clearing, the helicopter was already lifting off. I could see Emma's face in the open door, looking back at us. Then they were gone, disappearing into the night sky. Our after-action helicopter arrived 12 minutes later. We loaded Thompson aboard and left Syria behind. The after-action report was classified. The debrief was classified. Everything about the mission was sealed and locked away. We were told in very clear terms that we had never been to Syria. The mission had never happened. Emma, whoever she really was, had never been held by extremists, and we had certainly never rescued her. National security, they said. Diplomatic complications. Need-to-know basis. We went back to Fort Bragg, back to normal rotations, back to training exercises and routine deployments. Thompson recovered from his wound, though the scar pulled every time he lifted his arm. We didn't talk about Syria. Officially, there was nothing to talk about. But something felt off. Wrong in a way I couldn't quite define. It started with small things. Carter got transferred to a desk job in Germany. Sudden, unexpected, no explanation given. Martinez was reassigned to a unit in South Korea. Davis got selected for an instructor position at Fort Benning. One by one, our team was being scattered. "They're separating us," Thompson said one night over beers at a dive bar off base. It was just the two of us left at Bragg. "Breaking up the team that knows what happened." Maybe, but I knew he was right. 3 months after the mission, I got new orders too. Training command, stateside duty only. No more deployments, no more field work. A career path that led straight to a desk and retirement. I tried to convince myself it was normal, that this was just how the military worked sometimes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being managed, controlled, kept quiet. Then 6 months after Syria, the envelope arrived. The photograph of the little girl. The message, "You saved the wrong person." I stared at it for days, trying to understand. The girl in the photo wasn't Emma, she was too young, but there was something familiar about her face, something that nagged at me. I started digging, quietly, carefully, using contacts I'd made over the years, calling in favors from people who knew how to find information that wasn't meant to be found. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Emma wasn't just anyone's daughter. She was the daughter of Senator Richard Hastings, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, one of the most powerful men in Washington, a man who controlled military budgets, oversaw defense policy, and had the power to make or break careers with a single phone call. His daughter had gone missing while volunteering with a humanitarian organization in Syria. The official story was that she'd returned home safely after a brief kidnapping scare. No details, no press coverage beyond a single paragraph buried in the news cycle. But that wasn't the part that made me sick. Senator Hastings had a younger daughter too, 7 years old, the girl from the photograph. Her name was Sophie. And 6 months ago, right around the time we rescued Emma from Syria, Sophie had gone missing from a park in Virginia, vanished without a trace. The senator made a public plea for information, offered a massive reward, deployed every resource available. She was never found. Now here's where everything changed. But real quick, if you're invested in how this ends, I genuinely appreciate a subscription. More soldier stories drop daily. Comment your country below. Always amazes me how far these reach. I sat in my apartment, pieces clicking into place, feeling like I was going to be sick. The timing was too perfect, too coincidental. Sophie disappeared. Days later, we got orders for an emergency extraction in Syria. We rescued Emma, came home, and nobody ever mentioned Sophie again. But somebody had sent me her photograph with a message I couldn't ignore. I tried calling Carter in Germany. His number was disconnected. Martinez in South Korea, same thing. Davis at Benning answered, but he sounded paranoid, scared. Don't call me again. Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't. Just let it go. He hung up before I could respond. Thompson was my last option. We met at the same dive bar, a place with no cameras and few customers. He looked haggard, hadn't shaved in days. "Tell me you haven't been digging," he said. I had to know. "Jesus, Webb," he ran his hair through his hair. "Do you understand what you're messing with? Who you're messing with? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me Sophie Hastings wasn't the leverage they used to make the senator cooperate with something. Tell me we didn't rescue his daughter while his other daughter was being held somewhere, insurance to keep him quiet." Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I got a visit 2 weeks ago. 2 men in suits, no badges, no names. They knew things about my family, where my sister lives, where my mother works. They said I should focus on my career and forget about Syria. They were very convincing." "They threatened you?" "They didn't have to threaten. The implication was enough." He looked at me with hollow eyes. "We're soldiers, Webb. We follow orders. We did our job. What happens in the political world, that's above our pay grade." "We're not talking about politics. We're talking about a 7-year-old girl who vanished so her father would play ball with someone." "You don't know that." "Then why send me your photograph? Why the message?" Thompson stood up. "Maybe someone wants you to look into it. Maybe someone wants you to make noise so they have an excuse to silence you permanently. Either way, you're being played. Leave it alone." He left. I sat there for another hour, staring at a beer I wasn't drinking, trying to decide what to do. The smart play was to listen to Thompson, let it go, focus on my career, live my life, forget Syria ever happened. But I kept seeing Sophie's face, that little girl who was somewhere, scared, alone, maybe worse. And nobody was looking for her because her disappearance was part of some larger game I didn't understand. I couldn't let it go. I started investigating on my own, carefully, using encrypted emails and burner phones, reaching out to journalists who specialized in military cover-ups and government conspiracies. Most ignored me. A few listened but backed off when I mentioned Hastings's name. But one didn't. Her name was Rachel Chen, investigative reporter for a mid-sized paper in Virginia. She'd been covering military scandals for years and had a reputation for not backing down from powerful people. We met in a public park, neutral ground. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said after I laid out everything I knew. "Senator Hastings isn't just powerful, he's connected. If what you're suggesting is true, if his younger daughter was taken to force his cooperation on something, then whoever took her has resources and reach beyond anything you can imagine." "But you believe me?" "I believe something isn't right about Emma Hastings' rescue story. Too clean, too quiet. And Sophie's disappearance being treated like a cold case after 6 months for a senator's daughter. That's not normal." She pulled out a notepad. "But I need more than your suspicions. I need proof, documents, witnesses, something concrete. I can try to track down the rest of my team." "Do it, carefully. And Webb?" She met my eyes. "If we go after this story, there's no backing out. People who cross senators end up with destroyed careers at best. At worst, well, I'm sure you can imagine." I spent the next 3 weeks trying to locate my team. Carter had gone dark completely. Even his family claimed not to know where he was. Martinez responded to a message but refused to talk. Davis wouldn't even acknowledge my emails. Jackson was different. He was still at Fort Bragg, working in logistics. When I approached him in the parking lot after his shift, he actually looked relieved to see me. I've been waiting for someone to ask questions, wondering if I was the only one who couldn't sleep at night. You know what happened? The real story? Some of it. Enough. He glanced around nervously. Not here. Come to my place tonight. I've got something you need to see. Jackson lived in a small house on the outskirts of town. Inside, his walls were covered with printouts, photographs, maps, a conspiracy board that would have looked insane if I didn't know what he was investigating. I started digging the day we got back. He pointed to a timeline on the wall. Something felt wrong about the whole operation, the timing, the secrecy, the way they split us up afterwards. He showed me documents he'd collected, flight records that officially didn't exist, satellite imagery from Syria that showed our insertion and extraction, communications intercepts that mentioned the senator's package. Emma Hastings was the obvious target, high-value American held by extremists, but the mission brief was too rushed, too desperate. They needed her back immediately, and they didn't care about the risk to us. Because someone was holding Sophie as leverage. Exactly. Get Emma back, or Sophie doesn't come home. He pulled out more pictures. But here's where it gets interesting. I started tracking money, following financial trails, and I found payments, millions of dollars flowing through shell companies to a private military contractor called Apex Strategic. The name meant nothing to me. Apex does black ops work, the kind of thing governments hire them for when they need deniability, renditions, kidnappings, wet work, and they've been on retainer with the Department of Defense for the last 3 years. You're saying the government hired private contractors to kidnap Sophie? Not the government, someone in the government, someone with access to classified funds and the ability to coordinate a black ops team. He pointed to a photograph on his wall, the colonel from our briefing, the one with no name tag or unit insignia. I've been trying to ID this guy for months. No luck. It's like he doesn't exist. Because maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's Apex.
Jackson nodded slowly, which would mean our entire mission was a private contractor operation dressed up as military. We weren't working for the United States. We were working for whoever paid Apex to grab the senator's daughter and force his cooperation. I felt sick. Cooperation with what? That's the question I can't answer. Jackson turned to his computer, pulled up files. But whatever it is, it's big. Hastings chairs the Armed Services Committee. He controls defense spending. He has access to classified military programs. Someone wanted leverage over him, and they got it. And Sophie? Jackson's expression went dark. I don't know. But Webb, if we're right about this, if we go public, we're confessing to participating in a kidnapping operation. We'll be the fall guys, the expendable soldiers who went rogue. We didn't know. Doesn't matter. Plausible deniability works both ways. They'll say we were contractors posing as military, that the mission was unauthorized, that we're responsible for everything that happened. He looked at me seriously. Is your freedom worth the truth? I thought about Sophie, about the message someone sent me, about the 7-year-old girl who might still be alive somewhere, waiting for someone to care enough to find her. Yes, I said, it is. I need to tell you what happened next, but first, if this story's got you, show some love with a like and subscribe. I read every comment, especially love seeing where you're all from around the world. Rachel Chen published the first story 3 days later. Senator's daughter rescued an unauthorized military operation. Questions remain about classified mission. It was carefully worded, focusing on the irregular nature of our deployment and the lack of official records. The response was immediate and brutal. The Department of Defense issued a statement denying any military operation in Syria during March 2019. They claimed Rachel's story was based on false information from unreliable sources. Senator Hastings himself held a press conference praising his daughter's safe return, but refusing to discuss details due to ongoing security concerns. Then they came after us. An investigation was announced. Congressional hearings were scheduled. We were being accused of operating as unlawful combatants, of conducting unauthorized military actions, of fabricating our service records to cover up what was essentially a private military operation. Carter surfaced long enough to release a statement condemning the investigation and denying everything. Martinez did the same. Davis went to the press and claimed I was obsessed with conspiracy theories, that the Syria mission had been a legitimate classified operation, and that I was trying to destroy the team for attention. Only Thompson stood by me, and Jackson, who'd provided the documents to Rachel. "They're making us the criminals," Thompson said as we watched the news coverage together, "flipping the entire narrative. By the time they're done, we'll be the ones who kidnapped Emma Hastings, not the ones who rescued her." He was right. The media narrative shifted fast. Stories emerged about our team having financial troubles, about potential connections to private military contractors, about suspicious gaps in our service records. It was all manufactured, all false. But it was working. "We need more," Rachel said during an emergency meeting at her office. "Something that directly connects Apex to the operation, something that proves this goes higher than a few rogue soldiers. The colonel, if we can ID him, prove he's Apex, we've got our smoking gun." Jackson had been working on that problem for months with no luck, but he had one lead we hadn't pursued yet, the pilot who flew us to Turkey. It took 2 weeks to track him down. He was living in Arizona, working as a flight instructor, trying to stay off the grid. When I showed up at his door, he tried to close it in my face. "I can't help you. I don't know anything. You flew us to Turkey. You know this was a sanctioned operation." "I flew cargo. What happened after you landed isn't my problem." "A 7-year-old girl is missing, maybe gone forever. You can't live with that." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he let me inside. "I didn't ask questions," he said, pulling out old flight logs. "That's how you survive in this business. But I kept records, insurance in case anyone tried to throw me under the bus." The logs showed payments from Apex Strategic, communications with the colonel using a name, Marcus Reeves, former Delta, current Apex operational commander, and coordinates for the package delivery that matched our insertion point in Syria. "This proves the military contracted Apex to run the operation," I said, photographing everything. "It proves I was hired by Apex. Whether the military knew about it, whether this was authorized at higher levels, that's still murky." But it was enough for Rachel to dig deeper. She started following Apex's financial trail, connecting dots between defense contracts and congressional oversight, and she found something that changed everything.
Apex Strategic's biggest client wasn't the Department of Defense. It was a series of shell companies owned by defense contractors, companies that stood to profit enormously from a specific military program Senator Hastings had been blocking in committee for over a year. A next-generation drone program worth $8 billion. "The senator was the holdout," Rachel explained, showing me her findings. "The only vote standing between defense contractors and a massive payday. They needed him to change his position, so they took his daughter. Not Emma, Sophie. Right, Emma's kidnapping was real, bad timing that played into their hands. They grabbed Sophie, then offered a trade. Get Emma back safely, and Sophie stays safe too, but the price is supporting the drone program. And we were the patsies, the military team that never officially existed, carrying out a rescue that never officially happened, all so contractors could threaten a senator into voting their way." Rachel nodded grimly. "And if this goes public, they're ready to sacrifice all of you to protect the real players." The hearings began in September. Senator Hastings presided, naturally. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man whose daughter we'd rescued was now leading the investigation into whether we'd committed war crimes doing it. I testified first, laid out everything we knew. The mission, the briefing, the colonel who wasn't military, the connections to Apex, the financial trail leading back to defense contractors.
Hastings listened with a poker face that would have impressed anyone who didn't know what I knew. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Sergeant Webb, you've made serious allegations, but you've provided no concrete proof that this operation was anything other than unauthorized actions by rogue soldiers. Can you prove you were acting on military orders?" "Our orders came from a colonel you can't name, in a facility you can't locate, for a mission that has no official record." Hastings smiled thinly. "That's convenient." "With all due respect, Senator, you know exactly what happened. You know why we were sent to Syria, and you know what the price was for your daughter's safe return." The room went silent. Hastings' face went pale, then red. "Are you accusing me of something, Sergeant?" "I'm saying your other daughter deserves better than to be forgotten because her disappearance was politically inconvenient." He slammed his gavel. "This hearing is adjourned. Sergeant Webb, you're in contempt." They arrested me right there in the hearing room. I spent 3 days in a federal holding cell before my lawyer got me released on bail. When I walked out, Thompson was waiting. "You really pissed him off," Thompson said as we drove away from the facility. "They're talking about charging you with everything from treason to conspiracy." "Good, let 'em. Every charge is more publicity, more attention on what really happened." "Webb, you can't win this. They're too powerful." "Maybe, but I can make enough noise that someone with more resources picks up the investigation. The FBI, a different congressional committee. Hell, even international media." I looked at him. "We didn't do anything wrong, Thompson. We saved that girl's life. I'm not going to let them turn us into criminals for it." The story broke 3 days later, but not from Rachel. Someone, and I never found out who, leaked classified documents to multiple major news organizations simultaneously. Documents that proved everything: the Apex contracts, the payments from defense contractors, the communications about leverage operations targeting congressional oversight, and, most damning of all, a recording. Senator Hastings talking to someone on the phone. His voice strained, desperate. "You promised me. You said if I voted for the program, Sophie would come home. It's been 6 months. Where is my daughter?" The response was cold, professional. "The senator will get his daughter back when the program is fully funded and operational. Until then, she's our insurance policy. We can't have you changing your mind." The media explosion was instant and massive. Within hours, the FBI announced an investigation into Apex strategic and unnamed members of Congress. The defense contractors whose shell companies had funded the operation saw their stock prices crash. And Senator Hastings, rather than face the scandal, resigned from office and checked himself into a private facility for exhaustion. They found Sophie 2 weeks later. She was alive, held in a cabin in West Virginia by 2 Apex contractors who'd been paid to keep her isolated but unharmed. When federal agents raided the location, she was watching cartoons, completely unaware that the entire government had been searching for her. The contractors rolled on their employers immediately, named names, provided documentation. The entire conspiracy unraveled in a matter of days.
Marcus Reeves, the colonel who'd briefed us, was arrested trying to leave the country. 6 defense industry executives were indicted. 2 sitting senators who'd been part of the scheme resigned. And our team was exonerated, officially reinstated, given medals in a quiet ceremony that felt more like an apology than a celebration. But here's the thing about being vindicated. It doesn't undo what happened. Carter never came back to the States. He stayed in Germany, took an early retirement, and last I heard, he was working as a security consultant. Martinez left the military entirely, moved back to his hometown, and stopped returning my calls. Davis finished his instructor tour and disappeared into civilian life. Thompson and I stayed in. We felt like we owed it to something, the military maybe, or the idea of what service was supposed to mean. But it wasn't the same. Every mission felt different, knowing how easily we could be disavowed. Every order came with the shadow of doubt. Jackson got out after his enlistment ended, took a job as a private investigator.
He sent me a message last year. At least now when I'm chasing conspiracies, it's on my own time and nobody's shooting at me. Rachel Chen won a Pulitzer for her reporting on the scandal. She wrote a book about it called Expendable Soldiers. I read it once, haven't picked it up since. Too many memories. Emma Hastings gave exactly one interview after everything came out. She said she was grateful to the soldiers who risked their lives to save her, and she was sorry for what her father's choices had cost us. Then she moved to Europe, and as far as I know, never spoke publicly again. Sophie Hastings, now 12 years old, is living with her mother in California. The family's fractured, divorced, scattered. The senator is somewhere in seclusion, his legacy permanently destroyed. And me? I'm still serving, still following orders, but I keep a copy of that photograph in my desk drawer, the one of Sophie holding her stuffed rabbit, the message on the back that started everything. You saved the wrong person. Except, I don't think that's what it meant. I think whoever sent it was saying something else entirely, something darker and more complicated. We saved Emma because we thought we were following orders. We thought we were doing the right thing. But in doing that, we became part of a machine that kept Sophie captive for 6 months. We were the heroes and the villains in the same story. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd refused the mission, if we'd asked more questions, if we'd dug deeper before we went into that compound in Syria. But soldiers don't get to ask those questions. We follow orders. We trust the chain of command. We believe the mission is righteous. And sometimes that's exactly what people with power count on. I got a letter from Sophie's mother last month. She thanked me for speaking up, for refusing to let her daughter be forgotten. She said Sophie is doing well in therapy, learning to process what happened, trying to rebuild a normal childhood. She also said something that's been haunting me. Sophie keeps asking why nobody came looking for her, why it took so long for anyone to realize she mattered. I don't know how to answer her. Neither do I. Because the truth is, she did matter. She mattered enormously, just not in the way a 7-year-old girl should matter. She mattered as leverage, as insurance, as a tool to control her father's vote on a weapons program. She mattered to everyone except the people who should have been protecting her. I think about that a lot, about all the ways we failed her while thinking we were being heroes, about how easily good intentions can be weaponized, about the line between serving your country and serving someone's agenda isn't always clear until it's too late. The military offered me a promotion after everything settled, a command position, more responsibility, better pay, a way to move past the scandal and rebuild my career. I turned it down, not because I'm bitter, not because I don't believe in the mission anymore, but because I learned something in that hearing room, watching Senator Hastings pretend he didn't know what we'd sacrificed for his daughter. I learned that the truth doesn't set you free. It just gives you something new to carry. Thompson understood. When I told him about the promotion, he just nodded. Some weights don't get lighter. You just get stronger at carrying them. He's right. I wake up every morning and put on the uniform. I train soldiers. I run operations. I follow orders. But I'm not the same person who deployed to Syria. That version of me believed the system was fundamentally good, that if you did the right thing, it would protect you, that honor and duty meant something absolute. Now I know better. The system is made of people, and people are complicated, fallible, capable of using good soldiers for bad reasons. But I also know something else, something harder to articulate.
If we hadn't gone into that compound, Emma Hastings would have been gone, maybe permanently. Her father would have cooperated anyway, desperate for any chance to save one daughter. The drone program would have been funded, the contractors would have gotten their billions, and Sophie would have stayed in that cabin for however long they decided she was useful. We didn't save the wrong person. We saved the person we could save, in the moment we were given. The tragedy isn't that we rescued Emma. The tragedy is that we lived in a world where a 7-year-old girl could be held hostage by defense contractors, and nobody with power cared enough to stop it until it became a public scandal. I got one more message, about a month after Sophie was found. Another envelope, another photograph. This time it showed our team in Syria, taken from a distance, probably by the same satellite that had provided the intel for our mission. All 6 of us, moving toward the compound, weapons ready, thinking we were heroes. On the back, different handwriting than before. Sometimes the mission is real, sometimes the orders are lies. It's knowing the difference that costs you everything. No signature, no return address. I've spent months trying to figure out who sent it. One of the Apex contractors who rolled? Someone in the intelligence community with a conscience? A fellow soldier who knew what we were walking into? I'll probably never know, but I keep the photo anyway, right next to the one of Sophie, because together they tell the whole truth. We were good soldiers who followed orders. We were pawns in a conspiracy we didn't understand. We were heroes who saved a life. We were accomplices in a crime against a child. All of it is true. None of it cancels out the rest. Last week, I was training a new group of recruits, fresh-faced kids who still believe the movies, who think being a soldier means clear-cut missions and obvious villains and coming home to parades. One of them asked me, "What's the most important thing you learned in combat?" I almost gave him the standard answer, about courage, teamwork, following orders, staying calm under fire, all the things you're supposed to say. But instead, I told him the truth. You'll be asked to do things that feel right in the moment. You'll follow orders that make sense with the information you have. You'll make decisions you're proud of, and years later, you might discover that you were part of something darker than you realized, that your good intentions were used by people who didn't share them. The kid looked confused. So what do? You do the job anyway, I said, because not doing it, letting doubt paralyze you, refusing to act because the world is complicated, that's not better. You just go in with your eyes open. You ask questions. You don't trust the briefing just because it comes from someone with rank. And when something feels wrong, you speak up, even if it costs you. Did it cost you? I thought about Carter in Germany, Martinez refusing my calls, Davis's career destroyed by the scandal, Thompson's family threatened, Jackson's conspiracy wall. The 3 days I spent in a federal cell. Yes, I said, it did. Was it worth it? I looked at this kid, maybe 19 years old, his whole career ahead of him, and I gave him the only answer I had. Ask me again in 10 years. Because the truth is, I still don't know if it was worth it. Some days I think, yes, Sophie is home, the conspiracy was exposed, corrupt people faced consequences, justice of a sort was served. Other days I think about what we lost. The team that trusted each other completely is scattered and broken. The faith in the system that let us do impossible things is gone. The senator's family is destroyed. Emma Hastings lives with the knowledge that her sister was held hostage to secure her freedom. Nothing about this has a clean resolution, no neat moral to wrap it in a bow. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the stories that matter most are the ones that don't resolve neatly, the ones that leave you carrying questions you can't answer. I still serve. I still put on the uniform every morning. I still believe, despite everything, that there's honor in the attempt, in trying to do right even when the system makes it hard. But I'm not naive anymore, and maybe that's its own kind of victory. Sophie Hastings is alive because we refuse to let her be forgotten. That has to count for something, even if it cost us everything else. I saw Senator Hastings once after his resignation. Pure coincidence. We were in the same airport, different gates. He looked older, broken. When our eyes met, I saw him start to look away. Then he stopped, walked over. "Sergeant Webb?" "Just Webb now. I'm out at the end of the month." He nodded slowly. "I want you to know, I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I could protect both my daughters. I thought I could play their game and still come out ahead." "You couldn't." "No." He stared at his hands. "They have Sophie in therapy 3 times a week. She still has nightmares. She still asks why nobody came for her. Tell her someone did. Eventually." "Eventually." He said the word like it tasted bitter. "That's what I have to live with.
That eventually meant 6 months of my daughter thinking she'd been abandoned. That eventually required soldiers I'd never met to risk everything because I was too scared to do the right thing. You were protecting your family. I was protecting myself, my career, my power. He looked at me directly. You were willing to give up everything for the truth. I spent 6 months lying to keep everything I had. We're not the same, Sergeant, and I have to live with that. He walked away before I could respond. I watched him go. This man who'd been one of the most powerful people in Washington, now just another broken father in an airport terminal. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. The recruits I train now ask me for war stories sometimes. They want to hear about firefights and close calls and dramatic rescues, the Hollywood version. I tell them about the compound in Syria, about going in blind, following orders, doing what we thought was right, about the months of uncertainty that followed, about learning that the mission we were proud of was part of something we never agreed to. Most of them don't understand. Not really. They're too young, too idealistic, too certain that they'll know evil when they see it. But a few get it. I can see it in their faces. The understanding that serving your country isn't always simple, that doing the right thing isn't always clear, that sometimes the hardest part of being a soldier isn't the combat, it's living with what you learned after. Those are the ones I watch, the ones who might actually survive with their souls intact. Thompson calls me every few months. We don't talk about Syria much. Mostly we talk about normal things. His kids' soccer games, my attempts at dating, the weather. But there's an understanding between us, a shared weight. You ever regret it? He asked last time. Speaking up? Every other day, I admitted. You? Same. He was quiet for a moment. But what was the alternative? Keep quiet and become the kind of person who could? No. Then we did the only thing we could do. Maybe he's right. Maybe we didn't really have a choice, not the kind of choice that would have let us live with ourselves after. Or maybe that's just what we tell ourselves to make the cost easier to carry. I keep both photographs in my wallet now. Sophie with her rabbit, our team in Syria, reminders of what we did and what it cost and why it mattered. Sometimes people ask about them. I usually just say they're from an old deployment. Nobody pushes for details. But last week, a reporter working on a follow-up piece about the scandal asked me if I'd do it again, knowing everything I know now, knowing the cost. Would I still go into that compound? Would I still speak up after? I thought about it for a long time before answering. Yes, I finally said, but not because it was worth it, because it was necessary. Those aren't the same thing. She didn't seem to understand the difference. I'm not sure I can explain it, only that some choices don't have a good option, just necessary ones and cowardly ones. We chose necessary, and we're paying for it, and we'll keep paying for it for the rest of our lives. But Sophie Hastings is home, and maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. I'm out of the military in 2 weeks, terminal leave, honorable discharge, a decent enough pension, some medals in a box I'll never display. I don't know what comes next. Thompson says I should write a book. Jackson says I should become an investigator, like him. Rachel Chen offered me a job as a consultant on military affairs. Maybe I'll do one of those things. Maybe I'll disappear into civilian life and try to forget Syria ever happened. But I don't think I will. Forget, I mean. Because here's what I learned from all of this, the thing that matters more than the conspiracy or the scandal or the medals. You can't always save everyone. You can't always choose your missions. You can't always know whose orders you're really following. But you can choose what you do when you find out you were wrong. You can choose whether to stay silent or speak up. You can choose whether to live with the lie or pay the price for the truth. We chose truth, and it destroyed careers, broke families, ended friendships, and cost us almost everything. But a 7-year-old girl is home with her mother, and we can sleep at night. Some people might say that's not a fair trade, that we gave up too much for too little. Those people have never looked into a child's eyes and known you could help her and chosen not to. I have. For 6 months, while we were being investigated and threatened and silenced, Sophie Hastings was alone in a cabin, and I knew it. And I chose to speak anyway, even knowing it might make things worse for her in the short term, even knowing the people holding her might panic and run. That choice haunts me more than anything else. But it also freed her, because if we'd stayed silent, she'd have stayed captive. The conspiracy would have held. The senator would have kept voting the way they wanted, and eventually, when she wasn't useful anymore, I don't let myself finish that thought. The last thing I have to tell you is this. Heroism isn't clean. It's not simple. It's not always obvious who the good guys are. Sometimes you save someone's life and destroy their family in the process. Sometimes you expose corruption and become the villain in the official story. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose almost everything that matters. But you do it anyway, because the alternative is being someone who could have helped and chose not to. We went into Syria thinking we were on a rescue mission. We came home realizing we'd been part of a conspiracy. We spoke up knowing it would cost us. And I'd do it again. God help me, I'd do it all again. Not because it was worth it, not because the math adds up, not because we came out ahead, but because when a 7-year-old girl needed someone to give a damn about her more than they cared about their career, we were the ones who did. And in the end, maybe that's all being a soldier really means. Not following orders blindly, not trusting the system completely, not assuming the mission is always righteous, but giving a damn about the right things, even when it costs you everything, especially then.